places of residence during this unusual time in American history. But it seemed like a wonderful time to bring back one of our favorite Prologue guests from the past, and that is Jay Duckworth. But before I introduce Jay, he needs a full introduction. I want to just give the thanks that we always give at the top of Prologue, and that is, by the way, Prologue is 10 years old, and that has come from 10 years of support from the Department of Visual and Performing Arts, from TheaterWorks, from the College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences, and from the Chancellor's Office. And most importantly, for all of you who come and see Prologue live and are now watching it digitally, Prologue obviously couldn't happen without you. So above all, we thank you for joining us. Several years ago, I met Jay in New York City at the Public Theater, where he is the props master at that famed institution and done work all over New York City and beyond. Jay is an inspirational person, has been for me, and I know many of our students when he came during our production of Cabaret to talk about props. So we invited him back, a returning favorite, a returning champion. It is my pleasure, and we're all gonna just pretend we're hearing thunderous applause when I say this. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Duckworth. Hi, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you. You're much too kind, all of you. Thousands of people.
No, it is, and everyone is applauding at home. Jay, thank you so much for coming back via this medium to talk us through some of the things that you do and some of the things you're doing at this, as I said, unusual time in the world.
I was supposed to leave the day before the band to come out to do this prologue.
That's right. Jay Duckworth was going to come to Colorado Springs for our production of Hair, talk to the hair students, talk about props design, and I called him the night before and said, I don't think we can do it, and we couldn't. So you're going to come back in the fall, though, right?
I hope, yeah, yes, if we can.
Yes, for sure. We'll try it. Jay, I wanted to ask you. I just wanted to start off for those who maybe don't know, and I assume all of our students know, but what exactly is a props master? We talk about that, but maybe it's worthwhile to explain what are all the things that you do in the theater?
The best way that I can describe props is it's like when you move into a new apartment. Everything that you bring into that apartment is props. So what a prop person does is they have to make sure that the location that you are creating becomes not only harmonious color-wise, but also that it has it can bring you in emotionally on a gut level so that you feel that you know this place before you even before the show even starts. And for personal props, those are things that people keep on them. We deal with guns, we deal with swords, we deal with fake blood, we deal with some costume prop overlays, and also scenic and props overlays, as well as sound and electrics. So we deal with every different department in that we will create a prop that has to, like lamps. We have to create lamps or rewire a lamp that's an antique so that electrics can have it ready. We'll install hardware on a door to make sure it looks correct after the set people put the door up. So props is pretty much Eric Hart, who is the guy who wrote like 2 really great prop books, describes it as anything that has ever existed or has the potential to exist.
So you've described in many ways basically all of technical theater, and I know that that's real because you intersect with everything, but so much of what I mean, even in that description of how you outfit your apartment when you move in, talk about the difference, or is there a difference between what someone might call a set designer and a props master?
A set designer will come in and figure out all of the ideas that the director has. Like the director will want to do 7 locations on a stage with a turntable. And your technical director will figure out how that works. people like Roy have like these minds that can take idea, because set designers don't actually, they conceptualize, whereas a technical director and carpenters make it engineered to something that can be done. Yeah. And then with the aid of us, the props people, the set designer helps, will either dictate what the space looks like, or we will work with the set designer to help fulfill what their idea is. So it's we get our information the same as everybody else in the production meetings, but the execution at the very end is something that we have to do as prop masters, because we have a set budget and a set of needs that have to please an actor, a director, a set designer, and our production manager.
So Jay, the sort of the major question I have is, how did you get into this? I mean, how did you decide that props is something that you wanted to do? Was this something from a young age, or did it sort of fall on you in some way?
My mom said that we went to Universal Studios when we were, well, I remember going to Universal Studios when we were young, when I was like a little kid. And I loved monsters. And the one thing that I saw that really just made me like crazy for backstage stuff was they had Dracula's tomb. And they showed how the coffin opened on its own, and that they used chocolate syrup for the blood. And my mom told me that, I said, that's what I want to do. I said, I want to do that. And my mom was a painter. And my father worked construction. So my mom actually taught me about colors, and she would take me out to see sunsets, and she would say, what colors do you see? And I'd be like, orange. She goes, other than orange, what else do you see? And what else do you see? And why is this like this? Where is the light hitting this? Where is this? And from my father, I learned how to build things, all the different tools. And in community theater, you had to build the set as well as be in the show if you wanted to be in the show. And so I did that. And when I was in Jersey, moving out to New York, there was a prop master I was working as a carpenter, and there was a prop master called Alan Cutler who took me in and said, if I want to stop building boxes, I can use my talent and become a prop master. And now he teaches at Rutgers University, teaching props, and that's what got me into it.
And now you're at the Public Theater in New York, and I know you teach props design at Pace University. Could you talk a little bit about the Public Theater, how long you've been there, and maybe, and we'll get into some of the specifics about some of the props that you designed, but what have been some of the great shows that you've designed while there?
I've been at the Public for about 12 years now. I started in 2008, which was, we were doing hair, which originated at the Public back in '67. And that was neat that you guys were doing it same this year. But it's when the stock market crashed. It was the big crash. And so a lot of people got laid off, and we did a lot less shows. But we were more personalized with the shows that we did. So as the prop master, I was doing every show we had. And we've grown so much that we're doing shows all the time, as well as tours. So we now have other prop masters who come in and who overhire, and the programming just exploded in a great way. And through that, we were able to do some really great new musicals for the American theater. Like Giant was pretty great. Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson was when I was there. Gosh, what else was like? Oh, we made a musical version of Twelfth Night.
Yeah.
Roadshow, Sondheim. The first show that I did downtown was Sondheim and John Doyle. So I mean, if that, you know, that's your beginning, that's your starting point. You know, so it's like, you know, when you're starting with theater greats, and it just like shoots you out of a cannon, you know, you don't know what, you know, if that's your beginning, where's the high point? You know, where is that high point? So, we did a show about school shootings called The Library, which was really good. Classic theater, like classic Greek shows. We've done many Shakespeare shows, but also shows that wouldn't get a second chance out in the world because it either would have too many people, or it was about, like, there was a musical called Southern Comfort, and it was all about trans people in I think it was Atlanta. Who's going to produce that musical? You know, there's no theater. I mean, there's a lot of theaters who wouldn't be able to touch it, but because the public is, we feel that everyone should have a voice, and if we don't tell those stories, who is? So the reason we do Shakespeare in the Park and those other things that bring the money in is so that we can do shows that are risky, you know, shows that probably won't get produced, but represent some people in our country who've been marginalized.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned Southern Comfort, because it's a show, you know, I think many people haven't heard of it, and I remember seeing it there. And when people think about the public, they often think, oh well, Hamilton and Shakespeare in the Park, you know, those the huge things that everyone knows, which of course you work on all of those as well. But that idea of giving a voice to the people who maybe previously were voiceless or marginalized or ignored. And that's so important. And I know you talk so eloquently about the importance of props within that conversation, how you are there to help actors, to help directors, to help authors tell their stories. I think so. There's a lot of times in American theater, maybe I'm editorializing, in fact I am editorializing, where we talk about the props person as the last person we hire if we have the budget to do it.
Oh yeah.
So antithetical to the importance, which I know you feel, in helping tell the story. And the way I've heard you talk about it before, someone having something in their hand that you created, that your team created, is about as intimate as it gets on the stage. And it's so important in telling that story.
The thing that is important, and the thing that I say, and this is why we don't get recognized, this is why prop people aren't on people's radar. If you notice my work, or if you see a props person's work, you failed. You have to be so seamless that no one notices your work. If I want you to notice something, you're going to notice it. It's going to have a different color. It's going to be a little bit larger. It's going to be featured in some way. It's going to fall out of a harmony. I get a lot of crap from other people because I do go way deep. I do deep cuts into my props. And someone asked me, like, just recently, they're like, why is that important? Why is the address on the inside of the checkbook so important? And I was working with Uta Hagen, excuse me while I drop a name. I was working with Uta Hagen, and it was a show called Collected Stories. And her character writes out a check. And what I did is I took the area of New York City where her character lived and put her name and the closest bank was Chase Bank on the check. So I made individual checks and numbered them sequentially, took a pounce wheel and went through each check so each check could roll off, and then glued the upper edge so it would fit in the checkbook and look like a check each time it was ripped off. And she never said anything to me. But she opened the checkbook and she saw those checks and smiled. And I'm going to cry. And for me, that is the important part, because actors are out there alone and naked. They have just their body as their instrument. And we need to support them and create a world that is absolutely supportive and absolutely safe for them to be in. And as part of my job, I have to make sure that they know they're being taken care of.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was getting at, because I've heard you talk about it, just in casual conversation about how important it is, and how, in fact, it can be even emotional that you are a lifeline in some ways to the actors, like their fellow actors on stage are. I wonder if I could ask, this is not to put a negative spin on it, but what are some of the things that you see in theaters where you're like, corner cutting? What are some of the things that we commonly make mistakes on that if we just put a little bit more time and effort, we could very easily accomplish?
Fight directors, intimacy coaches. People don't think they need a fight director. And you're putting an actor's safety at risk. You're putting an actor's health at risk. Even if it's a slap or a tussle or something like that, if you don't have a fight director, the first thing I look for, if there's any kind of violence in the show, is if there's a fight director. Because that is really, really important, for the safety of the actors. Because if somebody's like, I know, I can do this, there's going to be problems there. And I think also that in the world of props as well, I think the budgets don't reflect the work, and the pay doesn't reflect the work that we put into it. A set designer or lighting designer or costumer or video designer, sound, all can do other projects because they'll have assistants and they just send that information in. Okay. Whereas, so you have a light plot, you have a crew that's building the set. The designer just gives opinions on what they can afford and everything like that. The prop master works from before the show rehearsal start until opening, and they expect you to be in that room. And if you can only do one show at a time, and you're getting $500 for the entire show, I don't know how people do it. So I think the one thing is, there's a lot of people who think that there are a lot of bad prop masters out there, and you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Could
you talk a little bit, you've done so many shows and have so many amazing props that you have created. I wonder if you could talk about a few of them, even if it comes down to very specific props from specific shows that have meant a lot to you, and maybe have good stories attached.
The first one I'll tell you is, I made a fire for As You Like It, and this was years ago. And the director wanted, it was going to come up out of the deck, and it was Dan Sullivan who wanted this. He was like, I want it to, the scene starts at night, so I want it to be glowing, and then it transitions to the morning, so I want the fire to go out. So you're showing this picture of this fire, and all of the stuff on the inside that is glowing right there is sea glass. And what I did is I spray painted the top of sea glass with flat black spray paint and then touched gray over the top of it and then put an orange gel underneath and had light come up from underneath. And it looks like a fire. And all the logs that are on the side have red mylar that's been cut up and put onto the logs so that it will move whenever wind hits it. And the mylar will catch the light. And as you can see in the picture, it'll catch the light and it'll look like embers. And so many lighting people came up to look at that. And they just told me outright, they're like, I got to steal that idea. And they're like, I'm this close and I can't tell that's not a fire.
Huh. Could you talk a little? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Could you? I mean, I'm looking at this other picture of this gorgeous staff that you made. Could you tell us a little bit about the backstory of that and illustrious history?
It's inspired from Alan Cutler's staff, who's my mentor, a staff that he made for Life is a Dream by Calderon. And when we did our first production for Public Works, which is where we get all the different people, non-professionals all over New York from different areas of life on the Delacorte to do a show, it was Tempest. And I knew that I wanted something for his staff that embodied Caliban, which is of the earth, and Ariel, which is of the sky, which is of the ether. So that's why at the top of the staff, there is an armillary sphere, but it all looks like it's grown out of a tree, like a small tree that was turned and manipulated to look like an armillary sphere. And after the show was done, the next year, I invited Dr. Neil deGrasse
Tyson, right?
Yeah, and Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson
Yeah.
over to be my guest. He and his wife be a guest at the show, and I gave it to him because he's right over the Hayden Planetarium, right across the street. And I said, you do so much for science, you do so much for logic, you do so much like giving. I said, I want you to have this. And he was really so excited. And his wife said, you're going to have to take that away till the end of the show. And I was like, are you sure? And she goes, he will hold that thing for the entire time. So yeah, that's the other picture. And that's from Tempest.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about, and I had the good fortune of being able to see this show, the Julius Caesar, and one of the most famous moments of that already famous show is this. Tell us a little bit about this bathtub.
The designer was just incredible designer, David Rockwell, who is an architect. He does major restaurants and major hotels, huge things, and he gets featured in Architectural Digest all the time. So that's how I'm going into this. And he says, well, we want Caesar to have like a clawfoot tub, and we want it like a gold tub. And people in the office said to me, they were like, let's just go leaf it. And I was like, no, it's not going to have that sparkle. It's not going to have that cachet. Mm. And I said, because the outside surface is just so rough. And so I found these gold leafed tiles that were clear on the outside, clear glass with gold underneath them. And they just sparked with light. And they were expensive. And the office manager at the time was like, these are really expensive. And I was like, but we have it in our budget. And she was like, but it's going to be done after the show. And I was like, we have to do this. we have to do this. And I showed it to David Rockwell with a couple different tiles so that we had different price ranges. And he said, I love this one. He's like, we have to cover it in this one. And sure enough, the tub comes up from underneath the deck, halfway filled with water, and it's steaming. You can see the steam coming off of it. And he's smoking a cigar and tweeting. And he's supposed to be, I think it was modeled on one of our presidents at the time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I recall. Well, I was in that moment of Caesar, who looked an awful lot like Mr. Trump, coming out of this, naked, and he was full on naked, coming into the theater in the middle of Central Park, literally a stone's throw from Trump Tower. I mean, this is when that kind of became the iconic image of the show in many ways. And so here we're designing, it really had sort of a political impact as well.
It was decadence. It was just pure decadence, and then he had a towel over on the side that we made sure was a giant JC, also in gold. And the table that was next to it was also gold and black, and this really nice cigar. It was really wild. It was wild. And we had protesters that stormed the stage. We got a lot of death threats. We got threats, bomb threats. That's how powerful theater is. It's to make you think. And the story, before people get a sour taste in their mouth, is it shows that you have to go through a political process. If you just try to kill someone, and it shows that everybody who is in that conspiracy dies a horrible death. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have democracy for the next almost 2,000 years in our world history. So that's one thing that that play shows. I mean, all the stories ring true today. That's why they last so long.
And if you look up Central Park, Julius Caesar, you'll see Jay's bathtub in one of the first images on Google.
I think I sent you a picture of one of the tiles on like a pendant.
Oh yeah.
If not, I took those off because so many people got such bad problems with threats and everything. I pulled the tiles off of one side and made them into charms for everybody so that they could regain their power.
That's great.
And I still have a couple left. I'll send you one out.
I would love that, Jay.
It's really, really cool.
Share it, and we'll make sure it's at the department so other people can see it.
Yeah, cool.
Jay, so I just want to make sure we have time for the students to ask questions here. So before we move on to something a little more tactile and hands-on, I know, speaking of politics and what you do, being political, because you're an artist, you're also, one of the reasons I adore you is you keep yourself busy all the time. And one of the things we're making sure all of our students and patrons think about in this time of sort of self-quarantining and so forth is that we have to stay creative. And some of the ways you do that incorporate what you know as a props person. Can you talk a little bit, and I'm going to show some images while you do that, your soap making and what you're doing to be involved in sort of the response to COVID right now?
I cannot sit idle. And I think that's just part of being an artist. All of us are artists. All of us want to help. The reason that we're in theater is because we are damaged individuals. It's true. And what we want to do through our art is to heal those other people that are damaged or that are hurt, or prevent someone from getting that same pain. And if the person that we heal is ourself, then that's even greater. But because of that, we constantly work. the most people that I've seen out there doing things are a lot of theater people. There are costumers, there are props people, there are sewing masks, you know, just taking all different fabric and sewing masks and sending them out. And Raise 3D sent me a printer about a year ago, and I started with a group called Shields for Heroes, and we are making face masks, PPE for healthcare workers and people on the front lines. And I just passed my 200 mark, and actually we're getting an Uber to come around to all the different printers to send the printers over to Paper Mache Monkey, which is a prop building shop owned by Grady Barker, and they're cutting the masks out there and doing the assembly. So in between printing of the masks, I make soap, you know, like handmade soap, so that, you know, and I just want to give it away, or like, you know, because I think you still have some upstairs from the last time I was out.
I do. Some J Duck. I don't remember what flavor of soap it is, but it's up.
Yeah. So it's, you know, and then I also, you know, do leather work. I you know, make sword belts and like all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to take this time to hone my skills. And I know that sounds so stupid or so, I don't know, self-indulgent, but my grandfather always said, if you can't fish, you have to work on the nets. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm working on the nets. And then when I'm ready to fish again, I'll have everything I need.
So Jay, thank you so much for that. I want to open this up to students for questions. So if you're thinking of a question, raise your virtual hand here in Zoom. But while we're doing that, Jace, I'm here sitting here in my kitchen. Is there something with just stuff I have around here that I could do while you're taking questions to, you know, be a props master here in my own?
One of the things I did for Mother of the Maid, which was a show about Joan of Arc, is we made a lot of pastries and foods because Joan of Arc goes to the King of France's castle, and I remembered a recipe from a fake food book by Tammy Honesty, and we made salt dough. And this is something that you guys can do at home, is take like a cup of flour. Do you have flour?
I do. Here, I'm going
to do you have salt?
I do, yeah. So a cup of flour.
A cup of salt.
Okay.
And then a half a cup of water, and just take the water and slowly put it in, but mix up the flour and the salt with
And look at that, Jay. I already got it all done.
What?
How fast I was able to do that.
That's insane.
Yeah, I know. So what am I going to do with this? Should I flour my surface here?
Yeah, flour your surface and then flour your hands. That's a lot of flour. All right. Now pull off a piece.
Okay. That?
Yep, and make it into a snake.
Oh, shoot. My snake just lost its neck. All right.
Great. All right. Now, do you have a knife or scissors?
Like, is that all right? Just a butter knife?
Yeah.
All right.
Up towards the top, like one hand's width at the top. One hand's width at the top. There you go. From there on up, you're going to alternate slices going 45 degrees.
Oh, my God. This is hard, Jay.
So you don't want to go all the way through, and you're going to make what looks like a shaft of wheat.
Oh, I see. So like this?
Yeah, little bitty cuts.
Okay. Oh, I broke one.
And then just go up a little bit and do another one, and up a little bit and do another one. Same on the other side.
I gotcha. All right. So I'm gonna do a bunch of these.
Yeah, and then spread it out a little bit.
Am I kind of close?
Yeah, that's kind of close. I mean, that's great for your first. And then just keep adding those on.
I'm gonna keep working on this while you take questions from the students. Danielle, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. Hello.
Hello, Danielle. First time caller?
Hi. Yes. So I'm also a props master and a dramaturg. And one thing I've noticed, heck yeah, is that it comes with a lot of challenges, especially at a college level, because you have a limited amount of resources, especially with your budget, but we do a hell of a job with what we can, of course. So I just wanted to ask, what's the most challenging prop that you've had to create or tackle, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I had to build a 13-foot guillotine for Terrence McNally. He wrote a new show called Dedications of the Stuff of Dreams. And the first day that I ever met him, he looked me straight in the eye and said, the guillotines in France used to stick. If this thing sticks and doesn't fall, my show comes to a standstill. Okay? This is Terrence, McNally. And I was so young and stupid that I was like, well, I guess you're going to be happy that you got me to work for you. And just left. And I had no idea how I was going to do it. And it was just a lot of failing a couple times in smaller models that I was able to do it. The one thing that I will say for a college prop master that is really, really important, or for any prop master that's really important, be realistic and upfront with your directors, designers, and actors about how long it's going to take to get what they need. And don't try to please people. It is not your job to please people. It is your job to make the best that you can out of your resources. You do not have to pull miracles. And if somebody says that's your job, you can call me up. I'll come out there and I will punch them right in the throat. Total throat punch. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is know when you're able to be able to make realistic timelines, and let people know, like, if you request this on a Friday night at midnight and say they want it in rehearsal on Saturday morning, you're not going to get it. Just be like, that's ridiculous. Miracle Worker is the name of a play. It is not a job description.
Nicole, you have a question for Jay. Go ahead.
I do. Hi. Hi. So my question to you is, since you've worked on thousands of shows and dealt with thousands of props, what's one show where not only were you extremely proud of because of the way it turned out, but also a show where the props told the story, if that makes sense?
Honestly, that would be Hamilton. And the thing is, it's David Corns, when he designed it, it's a blank set. Mm-hmm. It's 3 walls, and all of the props tell the story. And each one of those props we imbued with something. There's only one prop, one letter, and there's hundreds of letters in the show, and tons of notes, newspapers, everything. There's only one note that has a red ribbon on it. And that's the one when Washington asks Hamilton to come back to the front lines in battle. And the reason for that is the great costumer, Theone Waldridge, told me early on in my career, the eye will always follow color. And because everybody's in cream and everything, yeah, exactly. So because this note gets passed between 2 people and then it's upstairs and gets passed, but never, because they're so far away from each other, we just have to put different notes in people's pockets.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only note that has red on it, like a red slip. So people, the audience will follow it and see it stop there, but then when it's pulled out, they can see it go across the top.
That's so
I mean,
interesting you said that, because I learned that in art history.
Oh yeah,
That's what they used to do, is that they used to put little red marks like all over the painting, so that way your eye can follow the whole painting. That's super interesting.
in the circle back, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the letter goes around in a circle in that same direction of the Fibonacci sequence, around and back. And the one thing I'm going to talk about for harmony in color is, you guys know the color wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the Incredible Hulk is what color?
Green.
And what color is his pants?
Purple.
Great. In the first rap battle for the show,
Mm-hmm.
Paul Tazwell made sure that, because those are exact opposites on the color wheel, and they're so hot, that he put Hamilton in green and Thomas Jefferson in purple.
I just want to say hi, Jay. We met briefly when I was there, so it's really nice seeing you again.
I know, man.
Yeah, and I was just curious, from your perspective, because we're heading into things. We just had a conversation with Jeff Sugg and projection design, and so with all these technical and like highly like technologically advanced, movements in theater, where does props kind of fit in with that evolution as well, or do you see an evolution coming
with
from
complete
that?
harmony? Jeff Sugg and I worked on a show together in 2007 called the Slug Barrows of Carrow Island, and the entire show took place in a drawn cartoon. And so all of my images had to go with the images that he had. So we did it in complete harmony. And I fell in love with him because he is so passionate and he's so good at his job. And what we have to do is we have to be able to adapt and create what we can in order to make sure. And it's the same thing that we support the actors. We support each other like that, because what we want to do is create a net, and in a net, there is not one string that is more important than another. It's there to help each other. And that's the only way it'll work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good seeing you.
Nice seeing you.
Hey, I see you, Jess. So you unmuted. Go ahead.
So my question, because I ask you questions about props like basically every day, so I've picked that brain like every day. My question is, during like this super stressful time, and any stressful time really in your career and your life, like how do you like, I guess sort of like bring yourself down, like calm yourself and push forward? Like what are your advice for that? Because I know a lot of people deal with a lot of stress with our shows.
Honestly, I wouldn't have survived my first year at the Public Theater if I didn't unplug. And every day I would go in my office and turn everything off from 4 o'clock to 4:15. I'd fix a cup of tea and I would sit there and not do anything, not listen to anybody, and let the thoughts flow and just get out for 15 minutes. So it's just a form of meditation. Now, it really helps you if you take a glass out. It's the same thing as taking a glass of water out of a river.
Yeah.
If you take it out and you put it down, it's going to be cloudy. If you let it sit, all that's going to fall down, all that sediment's going to fall down, and it'll become clear. And it's the same with people. Take 20 minutes out, sit back, and give yourself time to clear your head. And if you're really busy, don't take 20 minutes, take an hour.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jay. You are wonderful.
You are too. Congratulations again.
David LeBeau, you want to turn your camera on if you could? And I think I've unmuted you.
Hey there. I'm David. I'm a student, obviously. I do mostly costuming, but I know in like some shows, say costumes aren't as prevalent, and so is there a show that you have worked on where there aren't many props to work with or to create, but you have to make an impact on them? Like, if you have not many props to show, do you try to be more impactful, or do you try to just make it blend into the background per se?
That's a great question, and it always depends on the world of the play. I just got done with Coal Country, and I only had 6 benches, and that's it. But the benches had to be feather light, and they had to do all kinds of different functions. So I made them out of aluminum, and they look really, really cool. But we also had to make sure that they became part of that world. So that was the only prop. I only had 6 props. And so I just had to make sure that they fit within the realm of that world. Of course, other things came up during tech. But yeah, it totally depends on you as a designer and what the director's vision is on what becomes impactful or what becomes the thing that you want to stand out. Because if it's referenced 3 times, you know it's going to show up. You know.
Thanks, Jay.
How's that? Does that answer your question? Very sweet. Thank you. Good luck with your career.
Looks like we have a question from AJ. AJ, do you want to turn your camera on? Let me see if I can find you here.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So my name is AJ. I'm one of the ethics ambassadors for the theater and dance department. So if it's okay.
Ethics?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to throw kind of an ethical question at you.
You can throw an ethical question at me. Whether I have ethics or not is a totally different story.
Awesome. Okay, so in one of your interviews, and even today, you kind of mentioned pleasing people and how you can't always do it, and it's important to note that, but also like stay true kind of to your own vision. So my question is, what are some of the ways that you have learned to use transparency and respect to communicate your ideas for the play while still respecting the wishes of the director?
In what context?
Like
because that's such a broad spectrum.
Absolutely. So I guess more to narrow it down, like in a play, if you know there's no way that you can do exactly what they're asking, or it doesn't fit with your own vision of how the props are supposed to look, how are some ways that you go about navigating that and communicating with other people?
I always try to be upfront, and I always make sure that people have 3 different choices when we get down to when we're in meetings, so that they have their voice being heard. So what I try to do is I try to be sensitive to all the needs of people when that happens. We did a show where there was a person of color, and the entire show, her hair was straightened. Like her wig was straightened hair. And she didn't say anything to anybody, but she said something to me because I was talking about like what she would have on her person and what she feels like this would be. And she said to me, she goes, why I gotta have this white ass hair? I have no idea. And I really never even thought of that as an issue. You know, I'm so blind to something like that. And I think if you saw on PBS, we just had As You Like It. Is it measured from As You Like It or Much Ado? There's a Much Ado About Nothing, and its the entire design and the acting and directing team were all people of color, and it created an entire new dialogue and entirely new play because there was no artifice. So we weren't doing colorblind casting, because colorblind casting was good for the 70s and maybe the 60s. We have to empower groups so they can show their entire voice. And that's what's important, because I think even today we tokenize by creating something that we feel we put out there so we can feel that we have been inclusive, without being totally honest with ourselves and honest with our community and honest with our art. Because there are stories out there that have not been told and that we need to tell. I'm going to cry. And unless somebody has the courage to open up those venues for people, they still won't be told. Thank you for asking that question. That's a very good question. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jay, I think we have time for one more question. I know Zach has questions. So Zach, if you want to get your camera up and ready.
Hi, my name is Zach, and
you have a microphone?
Yeah.
Are you a DJ? Is that what's going on?
No, I've just got a lot of tech.
Yeah, you also have very docile tones, my friend.
Well, as far as my question goes, I was wondering, I am a theater student who focuses on stage management and directing, and I was wondering how your interactions with a director, like what you look for from a director, and what is good communication to you from either a director or even a stage manager.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I'll tell you about the director in a second. Stage managers, I introduce myself and I talk to them, but then I go to the assistant stage manager or whoever the stage manager recommends, and that person is my liaison. And whenever the stage manager needs to talk to me, I make myself available. But I don't want to bother them because they have so much going on. If they need me, I'm available to them. When I need to go to stage management, I'll go to the assistant stage manager or whoever my person is that are my eyes and ears in the room. Because the stage manager has so many irons in the fire and has to keep a clear head on everything. So when I mean, most of the people that we hire in props come from a stage management background because we speak the same language. We know the urgency off stage. If something breaks off stage, then it has to go back on. And as for directors, what I try to do with a director early on is I will tell them my favorite joke. And then I'll ask for theirs. And it doesn't matter what their joke is. It matters if they have a beginning, a clear middle, and a clear end. If they can tell that story, then I know that I'm okay. If they can't tell a joke, I know that I'm in for trouble because this is someone who can't tell a story.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Cool.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everyone. I just want to, by way of ending this, just say, well, no, Jay, I have to show you this. I mean, this is the best I could do.
It's lovely.
Get a little, I don't know, a little band across it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very artful. And what you need to do is you can either put that in the oven to dry, or you can just leave it out, and it's going to be something cute. I mean, really, people have been doing that same recipe for centuries, and people make ornaments out of those. But they're great. They're great to have.
Mine looks a little bit like asparagus, but whatever.
Hey, then it's asparagus. There was a guy who they came to this town, and they claimed he was a sharpshooter. And you go look up the barn, and there's these little holes from where the gunshots and the circles that are drawn. He hit right in the middle of the circle, just totally perfect on the side of the barn. And the guy was like, that's incredible how you do that. I mean, you hit every single one. He goes, well, I shoot first, then I go up and put the circle around it.
Nice. Excellent. Well, then, yes, I was instructed to make asparagus, and I have successfully made asparagus.
Zygazint. There you go.
Jay, it is always a pleasure to talk to you and to share all of your knowledge, not just of props, but theater broadly with our students and with our patrons. And so
Well,
I hope
honestly, thank you so much. And I'm so excited about the growth. And I was really looking forward to coming out there because I wanted to see the new building in function. Because last time we had to have hard hats and everything. But yeah, I've fallen in love with the school, and your students are just incredible. And Jess and I been mentoring with Jess, and it's just like, it's really great. It's really amazing. And you're just an amazing human being, you know, and thank you for what you do.
I'm humbled to hear you say that. Thank you for everything you do, and to all of our students and to our patrons. Thank you for joining this edition, digital version of Prologue. And just an announcement, we're going to have the director, Rachel Chavkin, join us for our next Prologue in the next week or so. We'll distribute that to everyone, and a few other surprises coming up. So be safe, enjoy being at home, be creative, make some asparagus or whatever this is, and be well. Thank you, everyone.